I don't care about you. I just want your vote.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. It's Thursday. I'm feeling lit. You should be feeling lit. We've got an amazing rundown to share with you today. We're going to talk about the, latest updates with the war/ceasefire with Iran. A lot to get to there, including a pretty good piece that the Wall Street Journal put out today. It's an exclusive in regard to what our military stockpiles actually look like. And spoiler alert, not great, not great. That could be the reason why Trump decided to do an indefinite ceasefire, but we'll get to that a little later. Reza Pahlavi was in Berlin, Germany, and had tomato sauce thrown at him because he's, King Pahlavi, everyone loves him, right? The Iranian people are desperate for him and his leadership. I'm obviously being sarcastic, but not about the tomato sauce part. So we'll get to that in just a bit. And I just can't wait for Wosny Lombre to join us for the second hour of the show and the bonus episode for our members that will be behind a paywall. But the good news is you can become a member by going to tyt.com/join, or you can hit that join button. There are also some free and easy ways to help support the program by just liking and sharing the stream if you're watching us live. So thank you to everyone who's already done that. Please do it if you haven't already done it. And without further ado, let's get to our first story.
President Trump just ordered the Navy to shoot, kill any boat laying mines. Is this escalation?
No, not escalation at all. This is just President Trump. Never underestimate his ability to appropriately use leverage to strike a deal that's great for the American people. And when he says the strait is closed, he means that. He means where we've got the boundary water line there that says no boat is going to go past this. But that doesn't mean that just because we have a ceasefire that Iran can keep mining the strait.
You know that Iran uses the Strait of Hormuz to transport cargo and oil, meaning it's highly unlikely that they have mined the Strait of Hormuz. But nonetheless, today, President Donald Trump ordered the U.S. Navy to destroy any Iranian boats that are booby-trapping the Strait of Hormuz with mines. Okay, now according to the Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, the gentleman you saw in the video earlier, this is all classic art of the deal stuff. So this morning, Trump wrote the following on Truth Social. Let's take a look. He says, I have ordered the US Navy to shoot and kill any boat, small boats, though they may be, their naval ships are all 159 of them at the bottom of the sea. Then what are you talking about? What are you talking? I quit and I'm gonna be a florist. Okay, I'm gonna make flower arrangements for weddings. Hit me up. My email is, okay, I'm kidding, but let's go back to it. Let's go back to the insanity. Their naval ships are all 159 of them at the bottom of the sea. That is putting mines in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. There is to be no hesitation. Additionally, our mine sweepers are clearing the strait right now. I am hereby ordering that activity to continue, but at a tripled up level. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay, it isn't just Iran that uses the Strait of Hormuz in order to transport oil and cargo. Its allies and countries that have made deals with Iran do so as well, like India, for instance. So why would they mine the Strait of Hormuz? That is some of the dumbest nonsense I've heard from Trump's mouth, but it's Trump, so I guess we should just expect it. So soon after, he insisted without evidence, of course, that Iran's government is at war with itself. So this is a continuation of the narrative that we talked about yesterday, right? That there's divisions and fracturing within the IRGC. And I'm willing to believe that. It's not like I just deny straight up everything that Donald Trump or supporters of Israel have to say. I just want to see the evidence, right? I want to see something to go off of that bolsters the argument here. But again, no evidence. Here's what Trump said. This is definitely wishful thinking. Iran is having a very hard time figuring out who their leader is. They just don't know. You want to know who's having a hard time understanding who our leader is? The United States of America, okay? Anyway, let me continue. He says the infighting is between the hardliners who have been losing badly on the battlefield and the moderates who are not very moderate at all, but gaining respect. Okay, so if they're not moderate, if they're extreme, just like the hardliners, why would we believe that there is fracturing taking place within the Iranian government? Like none of this makes sense. Anyway, I'm not gonna read the rest of that because I will literally lose my mind. And it's Thursday. I've had 4 straight days of this stuff this week. I need a break, okay? So let's keep going. As we explained yesterday, none of this is true. There's no evidence that we can point to that says, yes, there are fractures within the IRGC. And today, the Wall Street Journal reported that Iran's top leaders issued nearly identical statements within minutes of each other, declaring unity behind the country's supreme leader, an unusual show of synchronized messaging that appeared to counter President Donald Trump's claim that Tehran's power structure is riven by internal divisions. And then you have the Iranian parliamentary speaker, that's Mohammad Ghalibaf, who wrote this on X. Let's take a quick look. In Iran, there are no radicals or moderates. We are all Iranian and revolutionary. And with the iron unity of the nation and government, with complete obedience to the supreme leader of the revolution, we will make the aggressor criminal regret his actions. I think he does already. How could Trump not regret his actions? This war has backfired in a devastating fashion. Iran did not control the Strait of Hormuz prior to the war. They now do control the Strait of Hormuz. They have closed off the Strait of Hormuz because Trump decided to respond to the blocking of the strait by doing his own blockade of Iranian vessels, which are now circumventing Trump's blockade by using their shadow fleet. As I shared with you all yesterday, the Financial Times reported that 34 Iranian vessels, part of Iran's shadow fleet, were able to transport cargo without the US being able to do a damn thing about it. That's the truth. That's the reality of the situation. But, here we are. We're stuck in this situation. Israel is awaiting a green light from the United States, says Israel Katz, who wants to go to war, who wants the war to continue. Israel is awaiting a green light from the United States, first and foremost, to complete the elimination of the Khamenei regime or dynasty. The initiator of the extermination plan against Israel, my God, and the successors of the leadership of the Iranian terror regime. And in addition, to return Iran to the age of darkness and stone by blowing up central energy and electricity facilities and crushing national economic infrastructure. That's Israel Katz, the Israeli defense minister. So look, time will tell what the Israeli government plans to do here, but make no mistake about it. Israel Katz's statement begins with, Israel is awaiting a green light from the United States. Why is that? Because Israel can't do a damn thing without the United States. Israel's military excels at one thing and one thing only: raping hostages in their prison system, Palestinian hostages, and killing unarmed civilians and blowing up buildings. That's what the IDF excels at. So the idea that the IDF would go in and fight Iran unilaterally is laughable. They would never even consider it. In fact, they never did consider putting IDF soldiers on the ground in Iran, but they have been demanding that Americans put their troops on the ground in Iran. So yeah, Israel is awaiting a green light from the United States. I know, Katz, I know. The real question is, how much more can the Israeli government manipulate the president of the United States into carrying out their dirty wars? And here's the thing. When you look at our inventory of weaponry, it looks like Trump's hands could be tied to some extent, which I welcome. So the Center for Strategic and International Studies released a report Tuesday that expressed some concerns about dwindling stockpiles. Now, these are not doves, right? The people behind this think tank are not individuals who are like, oh, we really want to discourage Trump from continuing this war. No, no, no. These are war hawks. And these war hawks are worried about us not having the weaponry necessary to defend Taiwan from China. They're like, our stockpiles, what are we gonna do? What about the war, the big war that we're aching for? Okay. So here's what they found based on their analysis of our military weaponry. Based on pre-war inventories, the Center for Strategic and International Studies estimated that munitions expended in Iran would represent roughly 27% of Tomahawk stockpiles. I mean, we do be killing a lot of little girls in Iran with our Tomahawk missiles, don't we? But let me continue with their analysis here. About 36% of JASSM, a third of SM-6, nearly half of SM-3, more than 2/3 of Patriot interceptors, and more than 80% of THAAD interceptors. That means the stockpiles are more pronounced, or I should say the shortfalls of our stockpile, more pronounced for defensive weapons like missile interceptors. Hey, what about the United States of America, considering the fact that we have a lot of enemies right now and we continue to isolate ourselves by being aligned with a pariah state like Israel? We have alienated ourselves. Trump has attacked our allies, European countries, NATO allies, threatening to, invade and take over Greenland. All of these Liberation Day tariffs, I'm sure, didn't make a lot of friends for the United States. So knowing that we have depleted 80% of our THAAD interceptors, it would be insane. It would be insane to continue this war. Absolutely insane. I mean, we're in a bad spot already because Iran has control of the Strait of Hormuz, and we don't have the military means to take control away from them. So how about we just cut our losses and hit the road and actually focus on our own country? And here's the other thing. You might be thinking, not a big deal. We're so strong. We'll just reproduce the weapons that we need, right? Not a big deal, except, quote, it's going to be years before we can rebuild those inventories, said Mark Kansian, a senior advisor to CSIS, who co-wrote this report. Israel is a liability to the United States. They are a liability to our national security. They are a liability to the economic health of our country. They are a liability when it comes to world peace. Let's keep it 100. And the fact that we're doing this under the false pretense of nuclear weapons that Iran doesn't even have is insane. This is about regime change or creating a failed state in Iran so Israel can expand its borders. Why are we putting ourselves in this position to help another country build its empire? What are we doing? But in the meantime, we have to endure the likes of Representative Addison McDowell, who fortunately we don't hear too much from, but unfortunately today we will. McDowell is insisting that Trump is the greatest negotiator to ever live. Let's watch.
Let's let him do his thing. He's the best negotiator to ever live. And so I'm excited to see what he can turn out from that. But look, you've got him already saving these people in Iran. They're slaves, and they're going to be murdered. And look, their lives are being saved because President Trump did what no president could do in 40 years. And so my Democrat colleagues, it doesn't matter what it is. They hate Trump so much. He's broken their brains. And it doesn't matter what it is. They're going to be no on everything and try to fight him, even when he's very well might be leading us into world peace.
Is he mentally challenged? Is that man mentally challenged? And I'm not just saying that as an insult. It is a genuine and sincere question. Donald Trump is saving the Iranian people. They're being butchered right now by American and Israeli bombs. Well, not at this very moment because we have a semi-ceasefire taking place. But prior to that, let me ask that McDowell character, the 168 children at that elementary school in Manab, Iran, were they saved? McDowell, were they saved? And make no mistake about it, okay? The treachery is very much bipartisan. This is not a Democrat versus Republican thing, okay? It's very much bipartisan. Now look, previous presidents, either Democrat or Republican, weren't stupid enough to be manipulated by the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu and Mossad into carrying out a war that is to the detriment of our country. But Trump was stupid enough to do it. Trump was stupid enough to do it. And it's not because he's a Republican, it's because he's stupid. He's a stupid, stupid man whose chief of staff worked as a consultant for Benjamin Netanyahu's re-election campaign in 2020. Susie Wiles. So that's what we're dealing with right now, just utter stupidity. Congress, utter stupidity. The executive branch, complete and utter disaster. Our military stockpiles, completely diminished because of the endless wars we engage in, or support, or arm, or fund. Since the beginning of Israel's latest wars, let's just start with October 7th, moving on. We have given Israel $30 billion minimum, $30 billion. And we were already drowning in federal debt. What are we doing? So let's move on to the economy. Worth checking in. Let's see how things are going. The economic ramifications of the war against Iran continue to mount, build up. We are not in good shape. Now, Faith Birol, who is the head of the International Energy Agency, or IEA, just declared that we are in a historic crisis. Great. So for reference, the IEA is the intergovernmental organization with 32 member countries, right? So this is an international organization that provides policy recommendations for the energy sector, because guess what? Oil and gas is part of a global market, right? It doesn't work the way that Trump would like you to think, where, oh, we got lots of oil and gas and we don't need anybody else. No, it doesn't work that way, homeboy. Actually, he does know that. He does know that, which is why in the beginning of the war, Trump lifted sanctions on Iran so they can sell oil and increase the supply of oil as oil infrastructure was getting absolutely devastated and destroyed in our Gulf countries, Gulf allied countries, right? So he's like, ooh, that's not good. Oil prices are gonna go up. People are gonna feel it at the pump. So let me lift sanctions on Iran. That's what happened in the very beginning of the war. Okay, so this Faith Birol character says the following: we are facing the biggest energy security threat in history. As of today, we've lost 13 million barrels per day of oil, and there are major disruptions in vital commodities. Here in America, many families are already cutting back on spending. And look, I hate seeing Americans struggle even more than they were already struggling, okay? It is an injustice of epic proportions. But believe it or not, Americans are still in way better shape than Asian countries. Countries like South Korea, for instance, which are really in a severe crisis. They're considering rationing their energy as a result. I mean, what did South Korea do to deserve this? You know, like, think about the fact that engaging in this war against Iran punishes the entire globe. But let's get back to Americans. The CNBC All-America Economic Survey of 1,000 people found nearly 80% have changed their spending habits in response to pain at the pump. More than 50% believe the increase in gas prices will last 6 months or longer. It'll be longer, my friends. I apologize, but it's just true. About 60% of respondents have cut back on entertainment, like eating out, movies, and concerts to save money. More than 50% plan to travel less. So this is having a domino effect on the broader economy already, and it's only gonna get worse. In fact, some of you might be wondering, well, what's up with the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, Trump says that there's an indefinite ceasefire, but Iran still has control of the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil and gas is transported through. Like, what's going on? Now, around 40% Americans are spending less on essential items like groceries and medical care. And mind you, they were already cutting back on medical care. Some 30% are relying on their credit cards even more at a time when credit card debt is at record levels, and no one in our government has done a damn thing about the greedy usury that's taking place with insanely high interest rates. So on the topic of Donald Trump, the president of the United States, who's supposed to be the leader of this country representing the best interests of the American people, what is he doing about it? He's brushing off concerns about the economy as his approval rating nosedives. So on Tuesday, he recounted the story of how he told his cabinet that he was about to tank the world economy just before launching the Iran war. Let's watch.
I hate to do this to everybody, but I'm going to have to journey down to a place called Iran and not make sure they don't have a nuclear weapon, because they will blow up the world. You want to see a bad stock market? Try blowing up the Middle East and then Europe, and then they come for us, right? And we're not going to let that happen. So I said to my people, they're all gathered, all these wonderful guys, Scott Bessent, the whole group, Howard, they're all doing a good job. I said, fellas, I got a little bad news for you. I'm going to put a little wrinkle in your numbers. Why, sir? We're going down to a place called Iran, and we're going to make sure that they never have a nuclear weapon, because they'll use it to blow up, because they're religious fanatics, and they will use that weapon to blow up the world, but they'll start with Israel in the Middle East, and we're not going to let that happen. And they said, wow, that's going to be bad. I said, yeah, it's going to hurt the market, and it's going to drive up the price of oil and whatever it is. But that's peanuts compared to what would happen if we let this happen. And if you would have told me that the Dow is almost, I'm looking at your thing, I mean, literally we're at 50,000. And if you would have told me that oil is at 90 as opposed to 200, I would be frankly surprised.
You want to talk about religious fanatics? You want to talk about Iran didn't have nuclear weapons. They weren't even building nuclear weapons. You have extremist Israelis trying to bring red heifers into some mosque and sacrifice it because of their religious fanaticism. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I don't understand Americans who support this. I don't understand. Well, I mean, I understand them if they're Israel supporters and care about Israel more than our country. I understand them. But for the rest of you, please don't get hoodwinked by this garbage. He got hoodwinked so hard. During the election, I remember asking myself, why is Benjamin Netanyahu so H for Trump, right? Because look at Biden. Biden's doing everything Netanyahu wants. Like, what is up with this dude? He's so horny for Trump. What's going on? And I realized what it is. Trump is just dumber. He's just dumber. Congratulations, America. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
I love cows.
Well, hello. That's kind of nasty.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back. So producer Taylor Ellis is like, he's the one who produced that story. And he's just like, I didn't mean to break you, but it's not that particular story. It's just, I feel like I'm going crazy. Like I see reality and everyone else everyone in positions of power just don't see it. I don't know. Anyway, Asimov's prophet says, isn't indefinite ceasefire just another way of saying forever war? I think you could just assume that America is always at war. We are always forever war, okay? We should just rename the country forever war. But yeah, I mean, this is not this is unprecedented. Like, this whole notion of an indefinite ceasefire, it's ridiculous. And it's because Trump can't win this war, but he doesn't want to admit loss. He doesn't want to engage in diplomacy. He doesn't want to make a deal, okay? The guy who has his name on a book called The Art of the Deal doesn't know how to make a deal. Anyway, Jay Jesper, I'm gonna read your comment when we come back because I spent too much time having a meltdown. I'll see you in a minute. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Jay Jesper 82 in our members section, and thank you to our members for supporting the show and keeping us independent so I can run my mouth the way I do every day. Says, hi, everyone. I just want to say that Anna is the real deal. You all, thank you again for your wonderful presentation today. Thank you so much. I did a presentation on international law and human rights for a public library in Oklahoma, and I really, really appreciated the people who appreciated the presentation, who were there, who asked questions. Just our country has a lot of wonderful people in it, and our government does a poor job in representing who we are and what we need. So before I get on with the rest of the rundown, I just want to tell you about what you can do to help with brain rot. We all need a break from brain rot. And so do you know what your brain rot index is? Because Noble Mobile wants to help you find out, okay? The average American checks their phone over 200 times a day, possibly more. I know I certainly do. And has over 5 hours of screen time. So the average American is rotting their brain, and you should know that that's not good, okay? That means you need to maybe take a break. So download your Noble Mobile Life app today and track your brain rot index to see just how much you're using your phone and how you can save money by using it less. That's available via the App Store or Google Play Store. And if you want to learn more about switching to Noble Mobile, and you can save money by doing so, just go to tyt.com/switch. All right, everyone, let's move on to our next story. And this is one that really speaks to my heart, because the fine journalists over at Dropsite News wanted to figure out who are the shadowy figures behind Canary Mission, right? This is an organization that viciously goes after, defames, and doxes Americans who are critical of Israel. And so let's get to the details on what Dropsite found. Dropsite News has identified the highest paid employees of the Israeli doxing outfit, better known as Canary Mission. Now, I myself have been a target of theirs, and I welcome it. I will continue running my mouth about Israel's war crimes and the fact that we should absolutely decouple from that pariah state, that genocidal state that continues to drag us into wars that don't benefit us in any way, shape, or form. That, of course, has nothing to do with Judaism or Jewish people, but it has everything to do with a foreign government that has been not a great ally to the US. So with all of that in mind, let's talk about what Dropsite found. And I just want to give a big shout out to Jacqueline Sweet, who did this reporting, and she did a fantastic job. So last January, Dropsite News was able to confirm that the site actually does operate out of Israel. So make no mistake about it, this is an Israeli outfit that is attacking and targeting Americans who are critical of Israel. Now, to add insult to injury, Israel wouldn't even exist if it weren't for the United States bankrolling the hell out of it. So let's remember the fact that they live off of our welfare and then have the audacity to bully and harass our American citizens because they dare to criticize a foreign country. So the unlisted website data revealed that an employee paid by the Israeli nonprofit Megamot Shalom as a writer provided content for Canary Mission's dossiers of targets confirming earlier reporting by The Forward, which, by the way, is, I believe, a Jewish publication, that Megamot Shalom's only known activity appears to be providing support to Canary Mission. Okay, interesting. So we know that it's an Israeli outfit. Great. Now, The Forward back in 2018 uncovered evidence that Megamot Shalom was formed as an entity running Canary Mission's operations by a UK-born businessman by the name of Jonathan Bash, who now lives in Jerusalem. Now, Jonathan Bash has made a real name for himself, bashing others for justified critique and criticism of Israel. That's what his claim to fame is now. Congratulations. So Dropsite has also identified 5 people whom Megamot Shalom has employed as so-called content writers, editors, and consultants. And they did so through a review of Megamot's business filings with the Israeli government between 2016 and 2024. This is getting real good, real juicy. So who are they? You'll be shocked to find that these are all American-born individuals who later moved to Israel, right? Land that they believe belongs to them. Okay, so you have Elihu David Stone, he's from Boston, now living in Israel. Yehuda HaKorhen from New York, of course. Abigail Borstein from New York. Aaron Dickel from Bethesda, Maryland. And then you have Alexander Duncan, who's also from Bethesda, Maryland. They're all based in Israel now. And they work for Canary Mission. These are the top 5 highest paid content creators, content writers, editors, and consultants. So these were the top 5. And I want to just kind of give you a little more information about them and what they're up to. So, by the way, just a side note, their American citizenship should be revoked. They're Israelis now, right? Great. So you shouldn't, since you have made a name for yourself, you have dedicated your life to doxing American citizens for criticizing the country you actually care about, you should give up your American citizenship. But that's just a side note. Now, there are more people associated with Canary Mission than these 5, of course. But here's what you should know about the 5 that we're talking about. So non-public websites revealing staging material for Canary Mission's website, showing that someone uploading content for a dossier of a pro-Palestine activist on the site matched the name of a person listed as a content writer on Megamot Shalom's business listing, a UK-born writer named Alex Ben Carson, now living in Jerusalem. Okay, so that's one other person that was identified aside from the 5 individuals that I mentioned earlier. So where does Megamot Shalom get its funding? Americans, of course. American donations are moved to Megamot via a New York-based nonprofit called Central Fund of Israel. So there is a nonprofit in America enjoying the tax-exempt benefits of being a nonprofit. And they're taking donations from Americans and then funneling that money to an organization that harasses, bullies, and doxes Americans for practicing their First Amendment rights and being critical of a foreign country. That is what's taking place here. So let's dive in on Elihu David Stone, because he appears to be the one creating dossiers on me. And he has associations with some real creeps. And I'm not kidding when I say that. So Elihu David Stone was selected as one of the 1992 Wexner Heritage Program Fellows. Stone stayed involved with Wexner, attending an alumni retreat in 1994 and writing for the group's website several times, most recently in 2017. Now, we've learned quite a bit about Wexner and his close ties and association with Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein was a trustee of the Wexner Heritage Program. Pretty gross, Elihu, pretty gross. What have you been up to? Maybe we should do some digging into your reputation. Now, despite being involved in a program that had a notorious pedophile as a trustee, by the way, a lot of Israel ties with Epstein, right? Stone has spent some time targeting us for having a problem with things like, genocide. In February, he shared a Canary Mission post on Facebook about the Young Turks podcast, writing, "Anti-Semitism is a virus. See what it does to people?" Right, because being against killing innocent people, including children, means you're anti-Semitic. That's how they're rebranding the word anti-Semitism. Anyone who doesn't like genocide, who doesn't like land theft, who doesn't like the barbarism that we've all seen on our screens for 2.5 years straight, they're anti-Semites for having a problem with it. Right, okay. Do they understand that they're making anti-Semitism or rebranding it to sound like a good thing? Maybe don't do that. But they can't help themselves because they don't actually care about the well-being of Jewish people. They care about a foreign country that they moved to. They were born here, moved to Israel, give up your US citizenship. I don't want you ever coming back here. So there was a federal lawsuit underway, or there was a federal lawsuit. It actually has a ruling that I love. Now, they were targeting Canary Mission over First Amendment violations, which are obvious. It was filed by the American Association of University Professors and the Center for, give me one second. I'm sorry, and the Middle East Studies Association. So these two organizations filed this lawsuit against Canary Mission over violations of the First Amendment. And based on what DHS officials in a sworn deposition said, they said that Canary Mission's dossiers were used by the Department of Homeland Security in 2025 to build lists of foreign students who express pro-Palestine views, with over 75 people identified based on Canary Mission's anonymous blacklists. So they create these blacklists, and the DHS under Trump is like, yes, daddy, tell me which foreign students I should target, throw in prison and deport. Like pathetic little cucks. So in January, a federal judge ruled in favor of the plaintiffs and said the case revealed an unconstitutional conspiracy to violate the First Amendment. Now, look, our system of government has been corrupted. The important elements that actually represent Americans and what's best for Americans has been partly dismantled, but at least we still have some semblance of justice. In this case, justice did play out. Now there's a group of 70 American religious and civil rights organizations that want DHS to open a Foreign Agents Registration Act investigation into Canary Mission, since the group's operations are, based in Israel, by Americans who left this country to go live in Israel and target American citizens for practicing their First Amendment rights and criticizing a foreign country. That's the reality of the situation. So if you're wondering why someone like Jake Tapper would have such a hard-on or hate boner for drop site, this is why. This is actual journalism. This is actual investigation. This is information that benefits the American people, rather than, misinformation or disinformation meant to manipulate Americans into supporting a foreign country that has done nothing but take our money, drag us into wars, and if we don't play ball, threaten us and destroy the livelihoods of some of the Americans who unfortunately weren't lucky enough to be able to fight back. No more of this. And for the billionth time, there is nothing on this planet, including Canary Mission, that's gonna shut me up about the atrocities being committed by Israel with our money and our support. I'm an American. That's my money too. And it is shameful that our government is implicated in the atrocities carried out by Israel, but it is, and that's the truth. We gotta take a break. We'll be right back with more. I wanna talk about Pahlavi and his amazing press conference in Berlin, Germany. You don't wanna miss it. We'll be right back. Smitten for Anna makes a comment about my Piers Morgan appearance. We are going to show you some video of that today. Congratulations on your restraint on Piers. Anna, you look so calm and peaceful. I almost thought you were using an AI Zen filter. Chef's kiss. It took a lot of energy to, well, actually it didn't. There was someone on the panel, and I'm going to show you a video today and give him a lot of credit. His name is Josh Rogan. He's a columnist for the Washington Post. I don't know how I never knew about this guy. He's awesome. Okay, so I think the fact that there was someone else on the panel who was just level-headed and made really good arguments, it was inspiring. It inspired me to just be calm and also try to just make good arguments and not let anyone trigger me. Socialized Hole says, Casper, happy Thursday. I love all TYT. I love all TYT hosts, but have a special place for you in my heart as you're the only one who has spoken out against the BS Karen narrative. Yes, we have to be kind to everyone. People who don't have power. It's funny that you mentioned that because I remembered today a story that we did about a woman who like lost it in a Victoria's Secret. And then later we found out that she had like a severe mental health issue. And I felt so bad that we covered that story and made fun of her. Anyway, back to the show. This is humanity, bitch, and you should appreciate it. You guys are super active today in the comments. I love it. I'm going to try to read a few right now before we move on to our next story. We have in our Twitch community, Canadian Skull Dragon, who says of Trump, he's such a disaster and disgrace. I agree. Septepenra says Americans used to have that revolutionary spirit. Now we're friends with despots. Yeah, I know. I mean, I think it's coming back, and that's a good thing. I think Americans are waking up, and it used to just be the left that was hyper focused on questions of war and peace. Let's keep it real. Like the neocons had fully taken over the Republican Party. I think what's changed this time around is luckily there are more and more Republicans who are rejecting neoconservative ideology. And that is critical because the left cannot defeat this foreign policy agenda alone. So that's just something to keep in mind. Building coalitions, issues-based coalitions matters, especially when it comes to something like foreign policy, because there's a lot of money and a lot of power behind what's going on right now. Let's go to our wonderful super chatters. We've got Pakistani American Hawk Sentinel says, I'm with Dan, who is running for Florida Congress 100%. Randy Swine. Oh, you mean Dan Bilzerian. Randy Swine is a traitor and certified kosher Zionist. This dude's so guilty, his shadow needs a lawyer. The only thing I disagree with is Haaretz is reporting today that in southern Lebanon, IDF have been engaged in routine and large-scale theft of motorcycles, televisions, paintings, sofas, and carpets. The superiors let them do it, no punishment. This is who they are. I don't know how you, and sorry, this is a new super chat. By the way, I don't know why I did that. I just, thank you to Pakistani American Hawk Sentinel. That was the first comment. The second part was from History Speaks. Thank you, History Speaks. Third comment is from DJ Payne 1236, who says, I don't know how you guys do it with all this craziness, but I admire and respect your passion in your work to keep bringing out the truth and challenging the system. You guys rock. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. One of my closest friends, who used to be a colleague at TYT actually, was like, I don't know, Anna, like, do you absorb a lot of negativity every day? Like maybe you should consider, building a different career. And I'm just like, but I'm good at what I do. So I'm going to keep doing it. All right, let's move on to Reza Pahlavi, who was in Berlin, Germany and enjoyed some tomato sauce today.
Thinking that the regime has the ability to actually commit to a lasting peace is a little bit too much of a fantasy.
Many people around the world think that you are an Israeli asset. Are you?
Yes. I mean, I'm answering for him, but yes, that was Reza Pahlavi, an Iranian monarchist, an exiled son of the former Shah of Iran, who is just real thirsty to be installed as a puppet leader, deferential to the United States and Israel, but it doesn't look like it's going to play out that well for him. Now, he was in Berlin, Germany, hoping to meet with the German government to pressure them to join the U.S. Israeli fight against Iran. Germany's government was unwilling to take that meeting. To which I say, finally, really, because look, the Holocaust and the previous crimes that were carried out by the Nazi regime, I think have made Germany very, very sensitive to any issue involving Israel, and they've been very deferential to Israel. However, I think they're finally getting to a point where I think we might be on the wrong side of history again, and you are. So don't join this war, it's a really bad idea. Now, Pahlavi was rejected, but he did hold a press conference that contained moments worthy of discussion. Now, this wasn't part of the press conference. He was outdoors, but this is also worthy of watching because for all that we hear about how much Pahlavi is loved, he wasn't really welcomed by some in Berlin. Take a look.
That's a
All right, so that was tomato sauce. Some people argued it was red paint. That didn't look like red paint. But police did say that the suspect was immediately arrested. Okay, so not a welcome, reception there. But what did he have to say during his press conference? Actually, more importantly, what type of questions did the journalists who attended the press conference ask, and how did he answer? And I gotta say, some of these journalists did a really great job. So there was this banger question about Pahlavi's recent attempts to rewrite history and claim that he never called for military intervention in Iran. We showed you that video. He made the statement on French television and he got called out about it. Let's take a look.
In a French TV show, you recently said that you never argued for military intervention in Iran, but on the 10th of February, you clearly stated in an interview with Glenn Beck that only a foreign military intervention could neutralize the apparatus of repression in Iran, and only that can be the solution. Do you feel responsible for the many innocent Iranians who have died to the US and Israeli bombs, may I say illegal bombing that you supported?
So I had to just kind of distill that, separate the question out as a separate video, because that was a fantastic question. That is the question I would have asked if I were part of the press pool at this press conference. So I don't know the name of the journalist who asked it. I just wanted to give her a world of credit because it is important to not allow individuals who called for the pain and suffering, for the bombing of a country, to then turn around and launder their reputation, rewrite history, and make it seem as though, no, I never called for war. Now, he was caught here, so he had no choice but to admit the truth, but he had to put a positive spin on it, or at least attempt to. Let's take a look.
The targeting of the regime's infrastructure and its elements of coercion was absolutely something that the Iranian people actually called for. They were asking, they were in fact insisting that come and help us. Based on what President Trump had said at the time, that if the regime hits the people, they will see a very harsh response. The air cover campaign that included hitting the regime infrastructure and apparatus of repression was a necessary step to equalize the playing fields for Iranians that were getting massacred on the streets. We have every right to tell the world when we are being shot on the streets, how else are we supposed to protect ourselves? We can't do it by ourselves. In fact, that was in the interest of protecting more lives from getting lost. Because the more the regime has a means to suppress people, the more casualties we will face. This is something that, in fact, limits the casualties as opposed to add to the casualties. And no one likes to see civilian casualties. Of course I don't. Of course we ache for anybody that has been collateral damage.
What exactly did he mean by we're getting shot at by the regime? We're getting killed by the regime. Homeboy, you live in Washington, D.C. You haven't stepped foot in Iran since 1979. Last time you were in Iran, you were 19 years old. What are you even talking about? You're enjoying the comforts and the privilege of living in America in safety as you called for military intervention against Iran. What do you think military intervention means? When you make a deal with the devil and you go to Israel and you talk about how much you love them, you haven't seen the way they carry out warfare? You were under the assumption that the US and the Israelis were gonna do targeted strikes? That's what you thought? You didn't think that. You're not a moron. I mean, maybe I'm giving him too much credit. I don't know. But he knew what he was doing. And now, I don't know if he regrets it, but I'm sure he's getting a lot of backlash for it. So for instance, he says that the Iranian people asked for it. I'm willing to believe that if you show me evidence of it. What percentage of the Iranian people said they wanted the United States and Israel to bomb their country? Tell me. What's the citation? I'm just supposed to believe the guy who's like thirsting to be installed as the dictator of the country that he just called for the US and Israel to bomb? We're just supposed to believe him? Do I look stupid? Do I look like Elika Laban? And calling dead Iranian civilians collateral damage sure demonstrates how much he values their lives, am I right? But this attitude is common among Iranian monarchists. And I want to make that distinction because the Iranian monarchists do not represent the entirety, not even close, of the Iranian diaspora. So Canadian author Yves Engler, actually, you know what? Before we go to that, there's one other video I want to go to. I want to go to C5 because I want to show you what goes through the minds. Do we have that video, C5? I want to show you guys what goes through the minds of the Iranian monarchists, right? So these are members of the Iranian diaspora. You'll see them out on the streets protesting. They love Reza Pahlavi. And it really does seem, based on their behavior, that they have complete disregard for the actual Iranian people living in Iran. And then there's this guy who kind of messed up a little bit, right? Because he said the quiet part out loud. Now, pay attention to the big contradiction in his statements here, but also the brazen disregard for human lives. Take a look.
Why do you have a US flag?
Because they are supporting us to get rid of the mullahs. IRGC, they are killing Iranian people. US and Israel, they are helping us to get rid of them.
So do you want...
Without US and Israel, we couldn't do anything. They would kill us all. 90 million people.
Do you support Trump's call to wipe out Iranian civilization?
100%.
You support Trump's call to wipe out Iranian civilization?
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Sorry, just straight. Can you say that one time?
So maybe Reza Pahlavi isn't stupid. Maybe he knew that a lot of Iranian civilians were going to get killed. And much like the monarchist you just saw in that video, wiping out 90 million people, who cares? I support it. So the gentleman who did that interview is Canadian author Yves Engler. And I want to give him credit. Please follow his work because he asked a really important question that gives us a peek into the thinking of these monarchists. And I think it's important for us to know about that. So let's get back to Pahlavi because his exchange with the reporter in regard to his contradictions about military intervention in Iran, important to focus on. He didn't answer the question, right? So she decided to follow up and he did not like that.
Even today, as I speak to you, you're shifting back to a mode of appeasement.
Again,
I think you should be apologizing to the people of Iran for appeasing the regime as opposed to having their back. I'm here to tell you, we are asking you this time to support the Iranian people. And we're not going to apologize for that demand because I think the Iranian people deserve your support. And I told you, we will fight the fight regardless of whether you help us or not. But let that be on your conscience.
Again, on French TV,
I think you asked too many questions.
No,
Let's speak
I can ask one more question. That's my right. Again, on French TV, you clearly stated or you denied the fact that you supported military intervention. And
yes,
now,
I do. I did.
And
of course I did.
You denied the fact.
I just told you the
Can
reason.
you please let me ask my question? You denied the fact that you support military intervention. Now, again, you legitimize the military intervention. I have another question. Your wife has in the past shared a post with a poster that says "Death to the Left." Do you distance yourself from this sentiment? Is that according to your own values?
Ooh. First of all, you don't get to decide whether a journalist is asking too many questions. But aside from that, didn't know that about his wife. Certainly didn't know that about his wife. Now, he made excuses for his wife. Her name's Yasmin, claiming that she was heckled by protesters in France during the Women Life Freedom Marches last year. But her death to leftist post was on social media. So you shouldn't be calling for death toward anybody, especially as someone who's seeking to be a puppet leader of a sovereign country who's gonna bring forth democracy. Get out of here, please. Finally, Pahlavi was asked about something that we all know to be true. Let's watch.
We can see outside that you're here with the help of the lobby group U.S Israel Press Association. The Israeli government supports you taking over in Iran, and the same government, that's the same government that started a war of aggression against your country with the US. So many people around the world think that you are an Israeli asset. Are you?
Of course not. But I'm a friend to Israel and the Jews. Iranians and Jews have a biblical relationship. In fact, the only two countries that can claim that. In modern history, Iran wasn't the only country in the Middle East that harbored Jews that were escaping Hitler and his regime and were given refuge in Iran. That's part of our history. That's part of our tradition of harboring persecuted people. Jews in Iran were free to practice their faith before the revolution.
Jews in Iran are free to practice their faith today. How do I know that? Because Israel bombed a synagogue. This wasn't some underground basement, where Jews were secretly gathering to secretly practice their faith. It was a literal synagogue. There are Armenian churches in Iran where Armenian Christians practice their faith. So let's get back to that synagogue that was bombed in Iran and destroyed, by the way, just totally leveled. Let's talk about that. An Israeli airstrike had completely destroyed the Rafinia synagogue in central Tehran. The Israeli army described the destruction as collateral damage from a strike targeting a commander. But members of the Jewish community expressed anger and outrage. Really, there was an Iranian commander hiding out in the Jewish synagogue? Is anyone really going to believe it? And then they call it collateral damage. Is anyone really deluding themselves into thinking Israel gives a damn about anyone, including Jewish people, if they don't believe in Zionism? Homayoun Sameh, a member of parliament and the head of the Jewish Association of Iran. Yeah, you heard that right. They have something in Iran called the Jewish Association of Iran. In fact, Iran has the second largest Jewish population in the Middle East, second to Israel, of course. Here's what Homayoun Sameh had to say. We condemn this attack. It disrespects our faith. Iran's Jewish community doesn't have good relations with the Zionist Israeli government. Clearly. Because Israel was willing to bomb a synagogue and use the same pathetic lie and excuse that they use for the hospitals they bomb in other countries in Palestinian territory. Oh, there was one terrorist there. There was a commander. Sure there was. All right, I should probably take a break. But you know what? When we come back, Waz joins us. We're going to talk about a debate that took place on Piers Morgan's show. It's going to be great. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Rich and powerful men abusing, assaulting, and abandoning young women. These rich and powerful men donate to the politicians in Washington, D.C., play golf with the elites in Washington, D.C. They are foreign leaders who we don't want to offend. They interact with our intelligence agencies that we don't want to disobey. There is something rotten in Washington.
And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
All those congressmen you just saw there are on the record as protecting the child rapists who were clients of Epstein. They have not prosecuted a single person outside of Epstein and Maxwell.
Yep.
Not one.
Is Trump engaging in this cover up because he's in the Epstein files?
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
So as the government keeps telling us, yeah, there's other people. Yeah, they raped those girls. So what? We're gonna cover up for them. But why are you guys so mad?
A nation that chooses impunity for the rich and the powerful at the expense of our children is a nation that has lost its moral purpose. Are you on the side of the people? Are you on the side of America's children? Or are you on the side of the rich and powerful who've had their thumb on the scales and shafted Americans for decades?
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one.
Who do you guys use?
We have AT&T.
And how much do you pay per month?
$345, and that includes a company discount.
How many people?
5 phones.
$70 a line, right? I've started a wireless company called Noble Mobile that is trying to cut everyone's bills in half.
What would like a family of 4 cost?
The average Noble Mobile user is paying $42 a month, but also they're using their smartphone 17% less.
Okay, how does that work out?
We give you $20 back in cash every month based upon how much data you use or don't use. You know when you're doom scrolling or messing around on your phone, you're like, oh wait, I'm actually costing myself money right now. The goal with Noble Mobile is to encourage us to look up at our children's lovely faces, like touch grass, appreciate life. A friend of mine calls these things our rectangles of sadness. So we're trying to change that and improve everyone's relationships with their phones.
It's a very noble cause.
Well, thank you, sir. That's what it is.
Been on YouTube for 20 years.
The original political partner on YouTube, the Young Turks.
The Young Turks.
The Young Turks.
Godfather of independent media.
Yeah. Favorite news platform by far. Oh, it's not even close.
The Young Turks. It's the largest online news show in the world.
I watched you guys before I had a channel at all.
So. And I watched Cenk, so Cenk's really the start of it all.
Yeah. Big shout out to Cenk from Young Turks.
Cenk Uygur, founder of TYT, a man who probably needs no introduction.
Cenk, so great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you, David.
Fan you worked for a long time, man.
Anna Kasparian is one of the most followed and influential progressive women online.
I love Anna.
Your presence has been essential for me to really grow.
Do all of you know the Young Turks? This is why what Young Turks are doing is so important.
I've watched you for many years. You are insightful. I thank you for that.
I was going to introduce myself, but it sounds like you guys might know us.
I can't stand these young people. Get them out of here.
What kind of a show are you guys putting on here today?
It feels good, Wosny Lambre joins us to take a little bit of the pressure off me for a minute. Okay, to hear from a different voice on the show today, because man, we've got a lot to get to, a lot of video that I can't wait to hear your thoughts on. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Super happy to be back on with you guys. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute, but I'm glad to have you. And I don't think you and I have had an opportunity to talk about the whole Joe Kent resignation story. But we will now because he just had a debate on Piers Morgan Uncensored. I gotta be honest, I didn't think he brought his A game. He did make some good points, but his debate was against Alan Dershowitz. So let's get into it.
I should be allowed to use that phrase without you calling me anti-Semitic. Alan, it actually depends if people are actually pulling strings, and I do think Netanyahu's been doing that. Let me bring in Joe Kent. I mean, Joe Kent, this is one of the more unsavory. Well, I'll use the term I feel is appropriate. Joe Kent, I mean, this idea that you can't criticize use phrases, terms.
And I'll criticize you for it. You can say what you want, and I can say what I want.
Oh no, Alan Dershowitz might criticize Piers Morgan for using the phrase pulling the strings. What is he gonna do? By the way, Alan Dershowitz made like this big deal and huge announcement about how he's no longer a registered Democrat because Democrats aren't friendly enough to Israel. He's gonna try to help the Republicans now. Democrats are like, thank you for that.
It's kind of crazy that this guy hasn't been completely and wholly discredited at this point. I get that Piers is putting on an entertainment product to a certain extent, as much as he's delivering the news to people. But the Dersh is just he's been so thoroughly discredited, it's kind of laughable.
Dersh can't find the camera if his life depended on it. Okay, he's always looking off to the side. It's so entertaining. Okay, so the whole point of this gathering on Piers Morgan Uncensored was to have Alan Dershowitz, a notorious Epstein lawyer, defense attorney, debating Joe Kent, who stepped down from the Trump administration. He is now the former director of national counterterrorism. And look, I felt Joe Kent is very mild-mannered, and I'm just gonna keep it real with you guys. At the end of the day, he's not anti-Israel, right? Like he still says things that are like semi-supportive of Israel. And so I think that puts him at a disadvantage in a debate like this because Alan Dershowitz is clearly a zealot in favor of Israel. However, much of the time, Piers was actually debating Dershowitz. But let's actually begin with Dershowitz's pretty insane claim that the majority of Americans are just anti-Semitic.
Well, popular support for Israel is plummeting in the US, a fact borne out by poll after poll. More Americans now sympathize with the Palestinians than they do with Israelis for the first time in history, and support is falling across all age groups and all political affiliations.
You mentioned, by the way, that so many Americans are pro-Palestinian. Let's be very clear. Very few people really are pro-Palestinian. They're anti-Israel. If they were pro-Palestinian, they would also be supporting the Kurds, the Uyghurs. They would be supporting the Sudanese. They would be supporting the Ukrainians. You don't have demonstrations on university campuses in favor of these other oppressed groups. Only for the Palestinians, not because of who they are, but because of who allegedly oppresses them, namely the nation state of the Jewish people. So it's another manifestation of the increasing worldwide anti-Semitism, and I'm going to fight against that.
You know, considering the fact that Americans had to fork over literally hundreds of billions of dollars for Ukraine's defense against Russia, I would say that it is literally one of the craziest things to claim that Americans didn't care about the Ukrainians, that they didn't, give a damn about that. I mean, the problem with Israel is that Israel is the bad guy. I know it's hard for him to understand that, but they're the bad ones in this whole scenario. But maybe my perspective is off. What do you think, Was?
I mean, no, your perspective isn't off. First of all, to address Ukraine, the way that he's so wrong is just insane and laughable. Like, do people not remember the Ukrainian flags everywhere when that war first started? Like everywhere, these flags were. These are not Ukrainians like in solidarity with their countrymen. It's like everyday Americans, liberals, just in solidarity with Ukraine. And what I would say to him about the Uyghurs or the Kurds or the Sudanese is that America isn't directly implicated in aiding and abetting their oppression.
And Americans did speak out against that.
Yes.
But again, the reason why it didn't blow up the way protests against Israel blew up is because our government is joined at the hip with Israel. So we're not just implicated, we're not just complicit, we are funding the atrocities. We are very much part of carrying out the atrocities. Sorry to interrupt you, continue.
No, but that's a huge difference, right? Like even with the Sudan thing, you see people, or at least I do, maybe I just know people were just too freaking woke for their own good, right? But not in this case, but you know what I mean? People saying that, yo, the UAE needs to be held accountable for what's happening in Sudan. The UAE is a disgusting entity for their part in what's going on in Sudan. Like this idea that people they're just picking on the Jews. They're just picking on the Jews. It's like, guys, like, nobody gets deported because they dissed the Saudi government or the Emirati government. Nobody gets, kicked out of school. Nobody gets denied employment. Nobody has these things happen to them because they diss any other foreign nation's actions.
Exactly.
There's only one foreign nation who is privileged in that way. Like if you want, like he had issues with Piers Morgan say strings are being pulled. I'm like, what do you call that?
Okay, we're gonna get to that. Hold, because that whole exchange was just out of control. But I want everyone to really absorb the fact that Alan Dershowitz just called the majority of Americans Jew haters. That's what he did.
No.
So aside from smearing Americans and admitting that the Israelis have been oppressing Palestinians, I mean, he said allegedly, but come on. Dershowitz made sure to engage in the language policing that was just referenced. So buckle up for this.
One of the reasons I think that Israel's been getting increasingly unpopular is because anyone that dares to criticize the Israeli government, and I stand by my suggestion that Benjamin Netanyahu has been pulling some strings with Trump because he managed to persuade the fourth American president. Well, let me finish my point. And I think I should be allowed to use that phrase. I should be allowed to use that phrase without you calling me anti-Semitic.
I don't think so.
I think I'm not anti-Semitic.
No, I'm not. By the way, I would never call you anti-Semitic. You're a friend of the Jews. You're a friend of Israel. What I'm telling you is something historical, that the phrase pulling the strings is a trope. And it shouldn't be used. And I wish you would use other terms. Put pressure, that's fine. Pulling the strings, having a puppet, that should not be permitted. I look, I like you very much, and I support you all the time, but I criticize you for using that term. Please don't use that term. It's historic.
No, it depends
it
if people are
too much.
It depends
if what other people who have different motives would say.
Alan, it actually depends if people are actually pulling strings. And I do think Netanyahu's been doing that.
I can't tell you how much language policing gets under my skin because I think it's used as a distraction tactic. So you're not focusing on the substance of an argument that actually matters. And instead you're just talking about semantics and what's offensive and what isn't offensive in terms of word usage. Recently I kind of got into it with a woman who was triggered because I said undocumented immigrants instead of illegal aliens. She kept saying illegal aliens, and like I didn't get on her case about it because it's like, okay, whatever. I want to focus on the substance. But then she kept interrupting me because she's like, is it undocumented or illegal? And it's like, shut. Anyway, and Piers stayed calmer than I probably would have in that situation. But like, I'm sorry, just because you have determined or you have declared that a certain phrase or word is a trope doesn't mean that the statement that Piers Morgan is making is untrue.
Yeah, but at a certain point, I feel sorry for these guys because that rhetorical trick has worked for so long. It's worked for decades in terms of policing the exact parameters of the discourse. Like they've been able to basically dictate how you talk about Israel, like at every single turn until very, very recently. So, that whole, when they're like, you only have a problem with the one Jewish state, or they use these tricks that they've always used to be like any criticism of a freaking government, a state a regime. But like, we're not even talking about Israelis. We're talking about the Israeli government and the actions that it's carried out. And they say it's on behalf of their citizens. Like, we're talking about a state. Like, I don't agree with what Donald Trump is doing in Iran. Him and his regime, what the American state is doing. That does not make me anti-American. I love Anna. She's an American. I love myself. I'm an American. Like, it just doesn't compute at all. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. I've been critical of the Armenian government lately. Am I an Armenian hater, or do I hate Armenia? No. But I don't agree with some of the decisions that the Armenian government has been making, namely their thirst in making business ties with Israel. Are you guys high? Are you guys high? Israel armed Azerbaijan to ethnically cleanse Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. What are you doing? But anyway, we're not talking about Armenia right now. By the way, tomorrow is the day that Armenians mourn the Armenian genocide. April 24th, every year, Armenians mourn the Armenian genocide. And yeah, I mean, Azerbaijan carrying out atrocities against Armenians with Israeli weapons, something that, the Armenian government should be thinking about as it's trying to forge business relationships with Israel. Anyway, moving on. So Dershowitz seems to take issue with reality, which he totally denies. He denies that Israel has outsized influence over the United States. And honestly, at this point, I don't know how anyone can say that with a straight face, but Dershowitz certainly tries. So what's his counter argument to the fact that Israel has an outsized influence on the US? Take a look.
It's the oldest anti-Semitic trope in history, that Israel's pulling, that the Jews are pulling the strings. Nobody tells Trump what to do. Trump decides what to do. What Israel said and what the United States together said is, we have intelligence that all these people are meeting in the same place, so this is the time to do it. But the United States and Donald Trump did not start a war based on Israel's interest. They started a war based on American interests.
So what I witnessed over the last year was official engagements from members of Benjamin Netanyahu's government, the Israeli government, come and have official engagements with members of our government and say things like, Iran can't have any enrichment. The policy has to be zero enrichment, when in fact, President Trump had just said the policy was no nuclear weapon. And you'll see President Trump echo that in his talking points now. And the former Supreme Leader, before we killed him, agreed with that. And that got both President Trump and the Supreme Leader to the negotiating table. And so for almost a year, we saw constructive negotiations between us and the Iranian government. This was a direct threat to the Israelis. The Israelis told us this much. The Mossad director, David Barnea, specifically said that their goal was regime change in Iran.
So this is the moment where I think Joe Kent's contribution to the conversation was really, really important, because what you'll hear over and over again from Israel's defenders is that no, Israel does not have an outsized influence on our government. And here you have Joe Kent, who until like yesterday was part of the federal government under the Trump administration and saw firsthand what that outsized influence looks like. And so we're going to go to the second half of what he had to say, because I thought it was important for the audience to hear it. But before we do, your thoughts, Was?
Again, like just reality has to set in at some point when you consider, our partners out in East Asia, like Japan and South Korea, like vital partners and allies economically. When you talk about like US economic interests, which we claim to care about more than anything, Japan and South Korea are number one and number two up there, and you could bunch in Taiwan in terms of our economic interests. We're literally taking weapons that they could be using in potential their defense against China, who we claim is the next big boogeyman, so that we could do military adventurism out in Iran, a country again that poses no threat to us in a region of the world that we have no vital economic interests. We have oil here in America. We're net exporters. We don't need their stuff anymore. And so this idea that it's not, and part of it is like the old geriatric sort of leadership structure in America. These guys do have a certain attachment to the Middle East on their own. And yes, Israel is, and their leaders play on that prior attachment, and they're biased towards antagonism towards Iran. Of course, that matters. But to say that Israel plays no part in this is absolutely nuts when Iran is a threat to them, not us.
Right. And Iran is a threat to them if they encroach on their neighbor's territory.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like Iran is like, oh, it's Tuesday, 5 p.m. Let's attack Israel. No, that's not what happens. Okay. But Israel wants to go unchallenged as it seeks to expand its borders. And, another way that we're screwing over our allies, our Asian allies, right? Japan, South Korea, is this war has increased oil prices. And they are struggling way more than we are.
They don't have oil over there.
Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty bad.
It's laughable to just the notion. And again, and our friend Danny Bessner, like he points it out, there's several spokes on the wheel. It's not just Israel and the Israel lobby. There is just a institutional memory when it comes to the Iranians and the guys that they helped out during the Iraq War, the hostages. I know with Trump, like the memory of the hostages and that humiliation looms quite large, which, okay, we're allowed to have that institutional memory, but the Iranians are supposed to forget about the Iran-Iraq war where we gave Saddam the weapons and the go-ahead, gave him chemical weapons to use against Iranians. Like they're supposed to just be like, no, we love the US.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You want to talk about humiliation? Israel humiliates us every single day. You want to talk about humiliation when the president of the United States is bent over, ready to take it from Israel? Every day. Doesn't even need lube, ready for it. That's humiliation. That's humiliation. Okay, let's go to the last video. This is where I think Joe Kent did a really good job discussing the clear differences between US and Israeli objectives as it pertains to the war in Iran.
Their goal was regime change in Iran. They weren't very shy about that whatsoever, and so they used their access through official channels, through official channels, to circumvent the intelligence community. Because anytime that the Israelis said the Iranians are 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon, they're making a nuclear weapon, the U.S. intelligence community, we would go and we would do our due diligence, we would check that, and we would find that the Iranian internal prohibition on developing a nuclear weapon was still holding. As a matter of fact, the Iranians were also withholding their proxies from attacking us as well. That's what the U.S. intelligence community agreed on. DNI Gabbard testified to that publicly twice in front of Congress. The Israelis, though, used their influence to circumvent the intelligence channels. And then they also had their surrogates within the media come and echo to President Trump via Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and say, hey, the red line is zero enrichment. And they said it enough, they made it repetitive enough through multiple avenues that President Trump was led to believe that his red line has to be zero enrichment.
So 2 things are revealed in what Joe Kent said there. Number one, again, the outsized influence of the Israeli government on our government and on our foreign policy. And number 2, the United States and Israel do not share the same objectives. They just don't. And so
we don't have the same problems.
We don't. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. Judaism has nothing to do with this at all, right? It doesn't enter into this equation at all. This is not about identity. This is about government. This is about questions of war and peace. This is a question about power. And Israel looks at, the former wealth of the United States, its military might, and thinks we got to use that to our advantage, even if it's at the detriment of the American people. Who cares about the American people, right? But what's so embarrassing, just to go back to that question of humiliation, is that our government has been whorish enough to be bought and manipulated by a foreign country to carry out actions in foreign policy that it does not benefit the American people. In fact, works against the best interests of the American people. That's the humiliation. Final word from us.
And people got to understand that Israel needs us to, one, be in conflict with Iran, but Iran to be just isolated on the world stage so that they're weakened and can't have a say in what goes down in the region, right? Like if Israel was just cool with like, their borders staying as they are, and I'm not talking about, them encroaching into Lebanon and all this other stuff, but to just remain as it was, and Iran normalizes relationships with the U.S. and the Gulf states, and we basically maintain an orderly peace. That would mean if they normalize relationships with America, the Iranians, that would mean when Israel, acted out in the region, Iran could have a say, and America would be like, yo, like they kind of have a point. We're boys with them now. Like they don't want that. They can't have that because, like all things being equal, if they didn't have the big brother America to help them out, they would be a very minor player within the region. They couldn't just unilaterally decide to expand borders and bomb hospitals and children at school and all of that stuff, because there's a real actual regional power that would be a check on their belligerents, and they just can't abide by that. And so they need this war between us and Iran.
And for anyone who's under the impression that there's no way that Israel or the United States can have diplomatic ties with Iran, given their religious extremism, look up Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia, because that's a little more extreme than what's practiced by the IRGC. And by the way, we have relations with Saudi Arabia, right? It's the whole religious extremism angle. That argument is BS.
Anna, we fixed our relationship with Japan, who we went to World War II against and dropped 2 atomic bombs against.
I know, yeah.
And this idea that neighbors can't, I'm like, I don't know, France and England and Germany figured it out. Why can't y'all? It seems pretty simple to me. Like, but we have to believe that these are just different, more evil, more sinister brands of human beings that could possibly behave rationally and come on one accord with us. It doesn't make any sense. Like our own human history shows us that there's another way.
I 100% agree with you. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about all of this urging toward Americans to just, do a special operation, just get that enriched uranium. That's all we want. We want that enriched uranium. Well, I've got an answer to that. So we've got that and more coming up. Don't miss it. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to our social break. Pakistani American Hawk Sentinel writes in again and says, Dan, meaning Dan Bilzerian, is right about Randy Fine being a certified traitor. I mean, I agree with him on that. The thing about Dan Bilzerian is he is right about Israel. I do not like his rhetoric about Jewish people. We differ on that. And so I think it's going to hurt him as he seeks a seat in Congress. But I'm sure he'll disagree with me on that. We'll see. But let me give you the rest of his statement. The dude's so guilty, meaning Randy Fine. His shadow needs a lawyer. The dangling part is slight problem. He would definitely collapse the whole stage like a comedic sketch. Send him to Tel Aviv via air, and the rest depends on the gravity. All right, Callie Millie writes in and says, for Anna's Freedom of Speech Fund. Thank you, Callie Millie, I appreciate that. Joe Winterton writes in and says, I'd buy some flowers for you, but I bet you would do an amazing job. Hell, I've never been given flowers. It would be a nice gift to myself. Joe, buy yourself some flowers. I actually buy myself flowers weekly. I like flowers in the house. It is what it is. Just liven things up a little bit. Anissa Book writes in and says, Israel doesn't care about American citizens because they think the majority of us are anti-Semitic. So they'll happily take our money and not GAF about what happens to us. I mean, I think that's pretty much proven at this point. So I agree wholeheartedly. Let's get back to the show. Shane in our super chat says that Dersh needs to make a dental appointment. I just think he needs help finding where the lens is. Okay, like you got to find the lens, dude. Can you imagine if I just did the show like this the whole time, like just looking off to the side? Callie Millie says, appreciate the segment distinguishing the monarchists and shining light on little known facts about Iran. Iranians who disagree with the exiles are a silent majority to avoid being targeted like Mahmoud Khalil. I bet. I mean, the media, it's so crazy because if you just focus on how the Iranian diaspora is reported on in legacy media, corporate media, you would think that they're all monarchists, but nothing could be further from the truth. And the part of the diaspora that doesn't like the regime, but they're not monarchists, or the part that doesn't want to go to war with Iran, those voices have not been represented at all in our media. And that's wrong. So anyway, let's get to our next story. Let's talk a little bit about this guy.
We got to know exactly where the nuclear stuff is. We got to know where the uranium is, and we got to start plot. I'm sure they are. We're going in there and getting it because regime change or not, that uranium has to be taken out because that will always be over our heads forever.
I personally don't feel that Iran's enriched uranium is hanging over my head. I don't lie awake at night scared that they're going to nuke me at any minute. However, the gentleman you just heard from was Chabad of Bel Air Rabbi Chaim Mentz, basically demanding that the United States not only continue its war against Iran, but go in, meaning put our troops on the ground to extract Iran's enriched uranium. I have something else in mind, but before we get to that, Waz, your thoughts?
I think look, man, and people can say what they want, like with the case that the pro-Israel people are trying to make, but having that dude with that accent make the case, I don't think is helping. I'm just saying, man. Like
honestly, Waz, honestly, he could be the most like clean-cut, Americanized person on the planet. I mean, he could look like Joe Kent and make the same argument.
No, what I mean is he's got an Upper West Side accent. Is just what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm not from New York, so I don't know what that means.
He's like, we need to go and get the uranium because it's just like, bro, like nobody's gonna be convinced of that.
Especially because the people who wanted to allegedly care about that, and I don't even think they really do care about it. Are the Israelis?
The other thing that I reject is this new frame that they're using that the Iranians can't have nuclear capabilities. But no, like we're just supposed to view Iran as the most insane, foaming at the mouth, crazy, death wish, theocratic, cultist regime when they've been the most rational and basically tempered actors in this entire thing, the entire way. And that's before we even get into, what happens to the countries that we don't like that don't have nukes. We've created the incentive structure.
Yes.
For the most sane thing for Iran to do is not only to get nukes, but to get them as quickly as possible.
I mean, Turkey would be insane if they weren't currently trying to procure nukes.
Oh yeah.
Because already you see
Israel said you're next. Yeah, oh yeah.
So, I mean, if you are against nuclear proliferation, then everything that's been going down with the United States, its behavior, its alliance with Israel should concern you. Because it is driving toward nuclear proliferation. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have something entirely different in mind when it comes to extracting the nuclear dust. Trump loves to call it nuclear dust. Like, anyway, so here's what I think should happen, since I don't think Americans really care about the enriched uranium. The majority of Americans don't care about Iran's enriched uranium, but the Israelis purport to. So here's what I think should happen. This whole notion of going in and getting the nuclear dust is Trump likes to call it. This is something that Benjamin Netanyahu has been fear-mongering about for literally decades, dating back to the 1980s. So I think the IDF should go in and get the nuclear dust. I think that's their job. I don't think we should risk the lives of our American soldiers in doing that operation.
Well, we will remain to see what happens if there is any attack by ground forces. I think it would be an extremely dangerous escalation if that were to happen. And once that kind of thing happens, very, very hard to control what then follows. So I think the Iranians remain pretty heavily armed. This has got a lot of ballistic missiles, a lot of stuff they have buried away, a lot of forces. It's dangerous. And I would not be comfortable, I have to say, seeing British forces committed to that on the ground.
I appreciate that we got that admission from Piers Morgan that he would not want British soldiers on the ground in Iran. And as an American, I wouldn't want our soldiers on the ground for something that the Israelis don't actually really care about. That was just the cover story to spur regime change, to spark a war and get regime change or a failed state in Iran so Israel can expand its borders. That's what Israel wants to do. We're not stupid. We can see what's happening here. But I'm going to go to one more video from that whole exchange in a second because Josh Rogan, who's a Washington Post columnist, was part of the conversation. I really liked what he had to say as well. Let's just quickly watch that, and then Waz, I'll bring you in.
We know they've got enriched uranium to over 60%. We know it's buried away. No one's quite sure where it is. And we know at the moment it remains buried away. But how do we get that without a ground force invasion?
Without a ground force invasion, well, I'd say with great difficulty. And here's something without saying too much is one thing I do know, and you can probably find this open source. Actually, I know you can, is that there are parts of the military that have been working this problem, this very problem, for a very long time.
How do we get at that nuclear dust that Trump keeps talking about, if that's even possible? Well, there's only one way, and that's through diplomacy and a negotiation. And if anyone thinks that anyone would be stupid enough to send American men and women into some subterranean dungeon, which is heavily guarded by Iran's most elite forces, to drag 1,000 canisters of highly volatile nuclear material while having some sort of firefight. I don't know what you're smoking or what movie you're watching, but that's not a real thing, despite the fact that, yes, some plan exists in some special forces vault somewhere.
I have to say, I did not expect someone who knows what they're talking about to be on the panel, but that was Josh Rogan. He's awesome. And I appreciate his contribution to the conversation. He's the author of Chaos Under Heaven. Waz, your thoughts?
Obviously, you would never hear anybody who's a supporter of this war be like, yeah, Israel, the IDF should definitely, that's, I watch coverage of this thing, read stuff every day. I've never seen that suggested one time. Which, you could draw whatever conclusions you want from that. And yeah, I just think people need to know that there's no solution to this war. We can't win it. There's no strategy. There's no weapons that we can deploy. We've used every single weapon in our arsenal
except for
nukes. Nuclear.
Yep.
Literally everything we have and the kitchen sink has been thrown at this problem. Iran still can strike our allies. And basically, again, when Trump made what was essentially a nuclear threat a week ago, a week and a half ago, the Iranians were like, we will literally blow up the entire world economy. We will blow it up. You can nuke us. We will still be able to blow up the entire world economy. And they're just explaining to you, we're going to destroy the entire Gulf region. They're completely defenseless because obviously we're using all of our defenses on behalf of Israel, not our Gulf partners, which I just think, I'm sorry, that's so funny to me because these guys have not for the people, of course. I'm just saying they're leaders who have been in lockstep with the U.S. and Israel. Yeah. We love all of this stuff. We hate Iran. Yeah. And then it's when push came to shove, they just got left completely in the dust and out in the cold. But yeah, there is no resolution that isn't a long-term peace. It doesn't exist, guys.
I totally agree with you. And the Wall Street Journal put out a report today about just how much of our weaponry has been depleted, not just from this war, but remember, guys, we've been arming Ukraine, we've been arming Israel.
War. Yep.
And so 80% of our interceptors gone, and they're not easy to reproduce. So that's not good for us, Americans.
2.5 months of this, we're down 80%. Thank God we spend $1 trillion. We spend $1 trillion a year on military stuff, huh? And
soon to be 1.5 trillion if Trump gets his way.
The Iranians are using these cheap ass drones and just like, yeah, it's tough. It's tough as an American taxpayer, honestly.
It sure is. It sure is. All right, we're gonna take our final break. Get that out of the way. When we come back, I literally couldn't believe this headline when I saw it, but it's true. There are divisions among Republicans in the House of Representatives in regard to whether or not President Donald Trump should pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Come right back. Welcome to all our new members. That includes David Caballero, Bobby Work, Sabrina 3755, Tracy Candelario. I like that name. Bromo Iburo. Awesome. Thank you so much for becoming members and supporting the show. I'm so grateful that I'm able to do the show that I do every day and not have to worry about, some board member calling me into their office to tell me like, you've been very naughty, or some sponsor telling me that they're, going to drop us because I was too, outspoken on something. Anyway, let's go to our member section where the Truth Dragon NJ09 says, I'm so done with this. Thank you for your attention to this matter wannabe British monarch nonsense. I agree. That sign off is so cheesy. David Ryder says, make sure the flowers are sustainably harvested. Hell yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Of course. I do a lot of research on that. And yes, I care about that deeply. So try to stay away from Trader Joe's flowers. I hate to say it, but look into it if you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, John Kelly writes in and says, love shorter breaks. It makes me more likely to start the show right at 3 p.m. rather than waiting a while so I can skip. TYT Salt Anna equals amazing. Thank you so much for the support. It took a little getting used to, but I think I like the shorter breaks as well. And I try to make sure that I read as many of your comments as I can, even after the social break. So anyway, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to the show. Anna and Waz with you. For our members, if I haven't read your comments yet, I'm going to try to read some of them during our bonus episode for our members. But I'm just going to read one comment right now from Randy Fine Ate My Handle, who says, I'm so grateful for Dropsite. I know, one of my favorite places to go if I want to get news, especially when it comes to foreign policy. And TYT and independent media in general, I see the stress on their faces, and Anna still showing up to give us the actual facts. Thank you. Randy Fine Ate My Handle. Thank you for watching, and more importantly for caring, because what we do wouldn't matter if people didn't care about what we have to say and the news we want to share with you. All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. I can't believe that this is a discussion or debate that's even taking place in the halls of Congress, but it is. We got to talk about the very real possibility that Trump is going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell and how some Republicans might agree with him on that. All right, let's get into it. So, if you can believe it, and I had trouble doing so, but it's real, members of the House Oversight Committee are divided on whether or not President Donald Trump should pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, the woman who is a convicted sex trafficker Epstein's co-conspirator, that Ghislaine Maxwell, the woman who was moved to a minimum security facility after Trump's former personal lawyer, now acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, had a meeting with her. Who knows what kind of deal was made during that meeting? We're not privy to it, but immediately afterwards, she was, moved to that minimum security facility where she's now playing with puppies. Now, Trump has famously not ruled out pardoning Maxwell. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is a video from July of last year.
Would you consider a pardon or a commutation for Ghislaine Maxwell if
it's something I haven't thought about? It's really something recommended. It's something I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not thought about. But you wouldn't. I can't talk about that now because it's a very sensitive interview going on.
Can you trust what she's telling him? She's a convicted trafficker who's eager to get out of prison.
Well, he's a professional lawyer. I think he's been through things like this before. But you should focus on Clinton.
So, Waz, let's say you find yourself in a position where you are the president of the United States. You find yourself in that position, okay? And reporters keep asking you repeatedly whether you intend to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. What would your answer be?
Hell no.
Hell no.
Or F no. It would be no uncertain terms. Like, she's a convicted, sex trafficker of young people, of minors.
Of minors, yes. And not only that, she did partake in abusing them.
Yes, she participated in their abuse. She didn't just traffic them to people who would abuse them. She was an active, willing participant in said abuse. And the idea that you would pardon them or commute their sentence is despicable. And it begs the question, why would he do that?
What do they have on him?
Why would he do that?
Exactly. Now, here's what's even more disturbing, Waz. It turns out that Republican members of the House Oversight Committee, Democrats are all in agreement that she should not be pardoned. But the Republicans in the House Oversight Committee are split on whether or not Donald Trump should pardon her. Which makes me think, oh my God, how many people are implicated in the Epstein files? Like, what is going on? If I were a member of Congress, there'd be no freaking question. No, of course not. I would not want the stench of providing cover and leniency to an abuser of minors like Ghislaine Maxwell by saying, I don't know, maybe it would be a good idea to pardon her. What do they have on you? That's what I want to know. So, earlier this week, we did cover how Maxwell's attorney, his name is David Oscar Marcus, felt that the chances of Maxwell getting a pardon, pretty good. Given what we're now learning about the Republicans in the House Oversight Committee, apparently Marcus appears to be correct in his assertion. So in an interview with Politico that was published this week, Oversight Committee Chair James Comer says the members are divided on the issue of pardoning Maxwell. Here's what he said. When asked whether he believed it was a favorable deal to issue a pardon in return for Maxwell's testimony, Comer said a lot of people do. Number one, why would anyone trust Ghislaine Maxwell, who's a huge liar? But also on top of that we know that our DOJ has no interest in prosecuting anyone who's implicated in the Epstein files. They've told us that over and over again. So her testimony wouldn't even come up because no one would be prosecuted. What are we talking about?
If so how plea agreements and cooperation usually goes, it's all right, we have you dead to rights for one crime. We'll show you leniency because you help us put away somebody who we consider to be a quote unquote bigger fish. Are y'all trying to tell me she's about to deliver some bigger fish? Of course not. That would mean actually powerful, influential people were about to be under prosecution by the American federal government. And we know that's not gonna happen. So what is she doing? What is she doing that she's earned some level of pardon or commuted sentence? Where is it? Aside from, she's gonna be quiet about our guys. That's it.
Yes. So Comer admitted the committee was split on the issue, but would not directly name who expressed support. Which one of the Republicans in the House Oversight Committee expressed support for a pardon, saying, get a load of this, I don't speak for my committee. You don't? Okay. I mean, I get what he's trying to say, but I would have worded it a little differently because you do speak for your committee. In fact, you were
sure
speaking for your committee, but you don't want to speak on behalf of the perverts who, want to consider pardoning her because they're worried potentially about their own wrongdoings coming out. That's what I think is going on here. That's my speculation. I want to be clear about that. So Comer claims that he's against the pardon, saying that it looks bad, you think? He told Politico the following: honestly, other than Epstein, the worst person in this whole investigation is Maxwell. Good job, Sherlock. Good job. He's really nailing it. And it could be because Trump, a longtime Epstein associate, will probably carry out this pardon, and maybe Comer's worried that it's going to be a bad look for him personally as a supporter of Trump and his agenda to, be associated with Trump as Trump carries out a pardon. And as we all know, Republican lawmakers are pretty terrified of speaking out against Trump. They're worried that Trump is going to direct his ire at them, much like he did with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But I actually want to ask you a little more about this because I think that times are changing. And I think a lot of Trump's base has left, right? Like you could look at these ridiculous polls like, 100% of MAGA supports the war in Iran. Yeah, those are people who still identify as MAGA, but a lot of people who voted for Trump, Republican voters who voted for him 3 times, have defected because he ended up being everything that they wanted to avoid.
I wonder, I think there's something to the idea that Trump's political power within the Republican coalition is weakened. I think there's something to that. But the Republican Party as an apparatus just kind of doesn't exist outside of him. So you can say Trump is weaker, but there's no counterbalancing weight to sort of beat him on its own. So even a weakened Trump is still mightier than anything the Republicans can mount against it. And so it's still like kind of bad math as a Republican to go against the guy and still remain Republican. Like there's just like, especially you as an individual Congress critter, like it's hard to envision that some little, dude in Kentucky is gonna be able to say, you know what? I can withstand the wrath of Donald Trump and the money that he can command to go against me and the power structures that he can nudge in a direction
like Thomas
that's against
Massie?
me. I mean, Thomas Massie seems to be the only one because his district just loves him. But most of these guys don't have that rock solid actual voter support. Most of these guys are in their seats because there's an R next to their name.
Yes.
And nothing else.
You're so right about that. You're so right about that. Because with Thomas Massie, he has made a name for himself as being principled, as being an honest. I mean, look, I don't agree with a lot of his political views. I agree with him when it comes to Israel, that's for sure. But the reason why his base loves him so much and they're so loyal to him is because he's not all talk. And he's willing to like walk through fire as he did with the fight over the Epstein files in order to carry out what he said he was going to carry out for his voters. And I respect that. I really do. Because that's what Congress is supposed to be, right? Congress is supposed to represent the will of the people. And we don't really see much of that. So you're absolutely right about the other Republicans. They are far more vulnerable than someone like Thomas Massie, who's beloved by his
even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was an insanely good fundraiser, insanely great name recognition.
Small dollar, by the way.
Small dollar fundraising. That means individuals are like, I love her and I'm gonna send her money. She, her campaign for Senate got deep. Trump and them was like, nah, we're not backing that. And she had to just straight up just quit. And she's somebody with name recognition, money, Like, she can influence people to fundraise, but like she's at the top of the stack of Congress people, and she had to bow down.
She didn't have to. I don't think she had to. I think she could have stayed in her seat. She could have continued.
She could have stayed in her seat for sure.
Yeah, but she had, she wanted. She claims she stepped down specifically because she feared for her family, and I can believe that. But if she chose to fight, which I kind of wish that she did, I think she could have easily remained in that seat. And who knows? Maybe that would have been a little bit. It might have been inspiration for some of these mealy-mouthed, pathetic Republicans who are now musing the possibility of supporting Trump after he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell. Imagine how embarrassed, like, you are a disgrace. Like, I can't imagine you being a family member of mine. Imagine having a parent that's on the record supporting Trump pardoning a serial sex trafficker and abuser of minors.
Oh my God, JD Vance, good luck. Oh
no,
my
goodness. not good luck. Goodbye.
He's done. Goodbye. Like, how do you run behind this stuff, right? Like, you see how they tied they tied Biden's record around Kamala's neck during the campaign.
Yep.
Which, I get it, was completely fair. My goodness, the crow this guy has to eat on the way to this presidency that's never going to happen for him. Wow.
By the way,
bro, your boss pardoned a child predator.
Well, it hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet, but there's some likelihood that it will happen. I mean, Trump hasn't poured any cold water on the notion. So, but with JD Vance, we might dodge a huge bullet because this is the guy, remember, he's on the record saying, I am a post-liberal Republican, meaning he does not believe in liberal democracy. Not good. Not good. All right, so blame for the administration's handling of the Epstein documents was laid at the feet of the former Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And look, she did bungle it. She's a total clown. There's no question about that. But some speculate that the real person running interference on the Epstein files wasn't Bondi, but it was actually Trump himself, to which I say, yeah. It was obviously Donald Trump. It was clearly Donald Trump. I actually think Bondi was okay with releasing the files. And then she realized, oh, this guy that I admire so much is implicated. So as soon as Trump got inaugurated, we read the stories about how the FBI was working around the clock to redact Trump's name specifically from the files, which is insane. And so we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. But meanwhile, I just wanna remind you all that Democrats serving on this committee were unified in being against the pardoning of Ghislaine Maxwell. She should serve out the rest of her sentence, okay? 20-year sentence. She's not even really in prison. She's playing with puppies in a place that she doesn't belong in anyway. And the injustice of that alone is pretty disgusting. All right, I'm gonna read a few comments and then we'll wrap it up and move on over to our bonus episode, our post game for our members, tyt.com/join to become a member. DJ Payne says, this debacle is really gonna tank Trump in the polls. If he thought he was underwater now, he will literally throw away his presidency in the trash if he pardons this animal. I agree with you on that. I mean, my mind wanders back to Q. Remember QAnon? Okay, first of all, they weren't quite right, but they were definitely onto something, okay? It just turns out that they were focusing on the wrong people.
Yeah. Turns out it wasn't Wayfair. It was Donald Trump and Leon Black and all of these people.
Les Wexner. Yeah. Not
yeah. And I just love the idea that QAnon, it was like, it's only Democrats.
It's freaking Tom Hanks. Remember Tom Hanks was one of the targets of QAnon? Okay. So a few more comments. This is from our Twitch community. Wildcard says he's doing it because he's compromised. I agree. That's my speculation as well. Shay70 says Trump is an instrument of divine will and he's stopped 24 wars. I know you're being sarcastic, but it's really funny to read that. RSDJ1 says, at this point, another nation needs to do a police arrest mission and just take Trump like he did in Venezuela. That'll make him a sympathetic figure to Americans who are against him right now. So let's not do that. I think that we should invoke the 25th Amendment. This guy is a huge threat to the future of this country. And I'm not just saying that because of his political ideology. He has lost his mind. All right, bonus episode is next. tyt.com/join. We'll see you there.